Hello everyone, it's Burden from MaticGaming.com, and today I'm going to show you a vampiric minion type of Necromancer build. It's very strong. I've been using it in PvP and PvE and fractals, and I've been having success with it in basically every aspect that I've been playing it in. And in tournaments especially, I've been doing really well in solo queues. Basically, it's extremely tanky. It does a lot of really high single target damage while giving you crazy amounts of lifesteal, and just it's pretty hard to die. It's pretty hard for people to kill you, and you get good condition removal. There's quite a few positives about this. And if you guys try it out, make sure you leave comments below and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Alright, so maybe you're watching this video and you're not sure if this build is a build you're going to be into or it's going to fit your playstyle. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the pros and cons of this build. Like any build, you have the positives, then you have the negatives. So let's look at the pros first, and hopefully you can get an idea of what this build is all about and kind of influence your decision to keep on watching once we get into the specifics of the build, like the traits and stat selections and the overall mechanics of how the build works. So the first thing I could think of as a pro is this build is extremely tanky, and what happens is we have so much lifesteal on this build, and when you look at each lifesteal on its own, it's quite small, so you might kind of look at it when you're looking at your traits and say, well, that's not really healing me for that much. But once you put everything together, this build can be extremely tanky. We also have, with our stat selection, you might be surprised at how much damage we're actually putting out. And we have amazing single target damage output. Now we do struggle a little bit with AoE damage, but we do have great single target damage output, very high consistent damage. It's not necessarily going to be big burst damage, but it's a very high, very strong, constant damage. We also have very strong condition removal, and that's just kind of being a necro. Necros have great condition removal, which means that our build can fit into the current condition heavy meta very well. And not only do we have good condition removal, but what it is we can take conditions on ourselves and put it onto enemies, increasing our damage even more. So it's even better than just removing conditions. We also offer a little bit of group support through our healing. Once we're in Deathshroud, we have a really good AoE heal, and that actually works into the mechanics of keeping your minions alive, which we'll talk about later. And we also have condition removal through because we are bringing Well of Power, which will help our group with condition removal as well in PvP and PvE. And this build also brings a good amount of CC, and we have multiple CCs. We have a couple of immobilizes. We have a knockdown, and we have a fear in our Deathshroud. And what it does is it makes kiting really easy for us. So while we're kiting, our minions are swarming the target and doing all their damage while stealing life for us. And we could kind of just run around kiting and doing our own damage. So we're not putting ourselves in harm's way. We are putting our minions in harm's way, but it's much better than putting ourselves in harm's way. But with any build, it's not going to be all pros. You are going to have cons as well. So let's look at some of the negative sides of this build. Now, a lot of the pros are dependent on your minions, which is actually a negative about the build, because when your minions are dead, you lose a lot of power in your build. So it's the utmost importance to keep your minions alive. In PvE, it's not as bad. You might have a minion die here and there and you can get it back up, but you'll notice the most difference when you're in PvP and all of your minions die. And with the way we're traded, our minions are actually quite tanky, so it doesn't happen all the time, but there are definitely times where you will lose a fight because your minions are dead and you can't resurrect them again. A lot of our healing and basically our major source of damage is from our minions. So we do okay damage ourselves, but we're not going to kill anybody on our own. We get a lot of our damage from our minions. So if we're letting our minions die too much, then we're just going to be losing so much damage output, and we're not going to be getting any healing, which will turn the extremely tanky part, the pro of this build, will actually turn it into a negative because we don't have our minions up to heal us. Now, a lot of the negatives I said already kind of come from one major one major negative, and that is the lack of minion control. And we don't even have a basic just come back type of button. So minions can be very susceptible to powerful AoE damage because they lock onto the target you're targeting, and they'll just run in there. And if you don't have another target to target and to get your minions away, they're just going to run right onto that target, and there's no other way to get your minions off other than by trying to run away, which leads into the next negative part, which is it can be difficult to disengage from battle sometimes because your minions like to hang around. So sometimes you have to run a decent amount of way to just get your minions off of the target they're currently on. And one more negative I could think of is compared to other classes, you don't have the maneuverability that other classes might have. You don't have like the escapes like a Savage Leap from the Warrior or some sort of Ride the Lightning from an Elementalist. You don't have those kind of things with the Necromancer. But honestly, I haven't really found the need to run away too much. So I'm okay with just standing up and fighting, and I tend to win most 1v1s with this build. Okay, so now that we looked at the pros and cons of this build, let's take a look at our traits and our stat selection and our weapons and things like that. Let's start off with our traits first. We have 20 in Spite. We have Parasitic Bond, gain health when you kill a foe. Spiteful Spirit, gain retaliation when entering Deathshroud. Death into Life, gain healing power based on your power. Training of the Master increases minion damage by 30% as well. It's pretty big. Reanimator, summon a Jagged Horror whenever you kill a foe. This is actually really good in PvE because when you kill a little creature or whatever, you summon a Jagged Horror. And we have ways to actually keep up the Jagged Horrors because within them they have built in a decay of their health, and with our life transfer in our Deathshroud, we can actually keep up Jagged Horrors. We could keep up about a solid 4, and then those 4 extra Jagged Horrors are going to be playing into how much damage and how much healing we're going to be doing, because we're receiving healing from every single time one of those Jagged Horrors hit. Minion Master reduces recharge on minion skills. Now this is also important because if we have minions go down, we want to make sure we get them up as fast as possible. Protection of the Horde, gain toughness for each minion you control. And if we have 5 minions in our utilities, that includes 2 bone minions, so that's 5. And if we get like 4 more Jagged Horrors up, then we're looking at roughly 180 more toughness. So it's actually pretty big when you start thinking about how many minions you can actually get up. Then Flesh of the Master, minions have increased health increased by 50%, which is also big because we don't want our minions being so squishy that they just constantly die. This build would not work if that was the case. In Blood Magic, we have Full of Life, gain regeneration when your health drops below the threshold, and threshold is 90%. So we'll basically be getting regeneration right away when we enter a fight. Transfusion, life transfer heals nearby allies, and this scales incredibly with healing power. It didn't scale with healing power before, so now that we have a lot of healing power, it's healing for 555 every pulse, and it pulses 9 times. So that's, when we heal our allies around us, we're healing them for about 5,000 when we use life transfer in Deathshroud. Vampiric, siphon health whenever you hit a foe, and you do damage per life siphon as well. Vampiric Master, minions siphon health and transfer it to you, which is pretty much the most important trait in this whole build because that's what I made this build around. Blood to Power, gain additional power while your health is above the threshold. And Bloodthirst, siphoning health is more effective. This actually also increases our minion damage as well, which is a big thing. Okay, let's look at our stat selection. So I have the Cleric's Amulet on, and it's the same thing for PvE. I go full Clerics, and we get tons of healing power, we get great toughness, and we get good power as well. So you see our power is low, or it's not low, but if we're looking at a really good damage build, you might think it's kind of low. But with all the damage we're doing with our minions, I think you'll be surprised with how defensive this build is and how much damage we're able to put out. For the runes, I have Runes of Speed. Now this is great in PvP and World vs. World. In PvE, you might be able to go down a different path, but I love the Runes of Speed, especially in PvP. Next we have our Sigils, and the weapons I am using are Axe, Dagger, Dagger, Dagger. But you can use Axe, Dagger, Dagger, Warhorn if you want. I just love having Deathly Swarm available to me in whatever weapon set I'm currently in. I do use Warhorn in PvE and in World vs. World as well, but in PvP I like having Dagger Dagger. For the Sigils, I'm using Leeching on both of my main hands. So when I swap weapons, I'm getting 1000 heal every 9 seconds. So that just adds on to all of the healing that we are getting. And I have Sigil of Superior Bloodlust to increase my power a bit while I'm fighting. In PvE and PvP, it works great. Okay, so let's talk about our minions a little bit. Now we have our healing minion, which is Blood Fiends, and it works a lot like the healing signet of a warrior. Every time it hits, we're getting 1,365 healing, and we can actively use it for a little over 5,000 healing, but we are not getting that healing from when he hits anymore because he'll be dead. So you want to try to never use this unless you have absolutely no other option, and that's what you just need to do to survive. For the Bone Fiend, it's a ranged minion and it applies cripple when it attacks, and it also has an immobilize, which makes kiting for us a lot easier. And we have our Bone Minions. We can actually explode these Bone Minions as blast finishers, but it is quite difficult to coordinate. But if you see an opportunity and they're like sitting in a water field or something, then it might actually be worth it to try. And then we have our Flesh Golem, which is a beast. He does a lot of damage, and he has a charge where he gains 18 seconds of stability and knocks everyone down in his path. And that works really great on points in PvP. Now we can touch on our weapons. The axe is great because, for one, the auto attack stacks vulnerability, so we can actually sit back and auto attack while our minions will actually be getting increased damage. So we can get about 14 solid stacks of vulnerability on by auto attacking. So all of our minions will be doing 14% more damage. Then we have Ghastly Claws. This one is great for building up life force. It does good damage, and it's also good for building up our life force so we can get into Deathshroud more often. Then we have Unholy Feast, which gives us 3.5 seconds of retaliation every time or per target that we hit. So if we hit if we hit 2 targets, we'll be getting 7 seconds of retaliation, and it cripples people around us as well. Then Deathly Swarm, which is probably the most important one. I think anyway. It takes 3 conditions off of yourself and puts it onto the target. In PvP, this for sure is one of the most important skills that you need to be using, because the meta is so heavy on conditions that you really need to be using this at the proper time, not just hitting it whenever. And then Enfeebling Blood applies bleeding and weakness. I don't really need the bleeding because I'm not conditioned, but I will use it for just putting weakness on somebody. So you can see if I'm auto attacking with my axe, I'm actually stacking up vulnerability. You can see it right here. That means my minions are going to be doing a lot more damage. Now I can start using my actives on my minions. There, I use my immobilize. So now he's chasing me, but he's stuck. Now he's going to get out of immobilize. I could use my charge on my Flesh Golem, and it knocks him down there. Now if he wants to get out, we can start talking about our dagger. We can use our number 3, which is our Dark Pact, and it immobilizes a target. So you can see all the kiting potential that you have in this build while your minions are doing damage and healing you at the same time. You're just kind of running around and keeping people at bay while you're still doing damage yourself, but nowhere near as much as your minions are going to be doing. So for the other dagger skills, we have Life Siphon, which is great because it actually heals you for quite a bit, and the damage on it is okay as well. And then the dagger auto attack actually does more damage than the auto attack on the axe, and it gives you life force when you use it. But I like the axe just because of the vulnerability you get on it, and it gives all of your minions more damage. But if you do need life force, I'd definitely be auto attacking with my dagger. Alright, so the last thing we need to look at is Deathshroud, and I have to go through this quickly because I don't have permanent life force, so what we have is on number 5, Tainted Shackles. It applies Torment in an AoE. We really don't need that too much. One of the great things is Life Transfer. You'll see I have a couple low minions, so it'll heal them. It heals 5 allies in our area, and you saw that it healed them for basically 5,000. And that's a great way to keep your minions up and make sure they're not dying, so you're getting the most out of your minions. Then we have our number 3, which is Doom, which is the AoE Fear. And that one's great when you're immobilizing and someone finally gets close to you. You can pop your fear, get them away, and then you can start to get away from them again. Okay, so I'm going over here to get some more life force, and I'll show you the number 2 in Deathshroud. It is Dark Path. It applies bleeding and chill, but one of the great things is it teleports. So if you actually have somebody running away from you, you can use that to catch up to them, and you apply the chill, you slow them down, and make sure that they're not getting away from you. Alright guys, this has been Burning from Matic Gaming, and this is my Minion Necromancer build with tons of lifesteal, very tanky, does pretty awesome single target damage. It's good in any aspect of the game, PvP, PvE, world vs world. Make sure you guys subscribe to see all of our builds that are coming out in the future. And I will also be releasing gameplay videos of this specific build in the future, so I can explain it kind of while I'm in action, and hopefully I can explain some more things that maybe I didn't touch on in this video.